I got them. Would have been better on a camera.
Okay. Well, what do we say we get started? And everybody else can join us as we go. So my name is Leslie D'Souza, and I am the Student Life Programs Coordinator at Ryerson University and one of the co-leads of the Orientation, Transition, and Retention Community of Practice with Caucus. And I'm really excited to present our two presenters for our Orientation, Safety, and Security webinar for today. So just a couple of housekeeping things. Everybody's on mute. So if you ever want to unmute yourself, all you need to do is press *7 on your phone. And then if you'd like to remute yourself when you're done, just press *6. We will be asking for people to hold their questions till the end. So if you can type them in the chat box and we can ask them at the end, or you can just volunteer your question at the end there. We will be recording this session. So I think most of you were on when that announcement got made, but this will be available on the Caucus website at a later date. So just so you know, this is being recorded. And if anyone has any technical difficulties, you can definitely type it into the chat box, or you can send me an email at lesleyd, as in dog, at ryerson.ca. And I'll type that in the chat box as well, but you can shoot me an email and I can work with you to try and figure out what's going on. And we will be using a couple of hashtags if you want to tweet out what you're learning or have any thoughts that you'd like to share on the back channel. So the hashtags we'll be using are hashtag OTRCOP, and you can also use the hashtag Caucus if you'd like. So I'd like to give a big welcome to our presenters, Jared and Amanda from York University. I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves and get us started.
All right, thanks, Leslie. Just a quick note as well. In addition, if you're having technical difficulties, you can also contact Lindsay at the Caucus office. Her email is membership@caucus.ca. Just make sure in the subject heading you write Osaku, Osaku, oh Lord, Lindsay, please help me, Osaku, and she'll know what you're talking about. But without further ado, this is the Orientation, Safety, and Security at York University webinar. I'm not sure if you can hear the epic music in the background, but it's supposed to parlay that this presentation will be that epic.
Totally agree, JR. This is going to be an epic one. We're so looking forward to sharing with everyone today and to have a bit of fun along the way. My name is Amanda Sartori, and I'm the Student Life Coordinator at York University's Glendon campus. Also, the engineer of awesome things.
And my name is Jared Caladumbo. I am the Student Relations Coordinator at York University Kiel Campus, aka the Assistant to the Regional Vice President of Awesome.
All right, let's get rolling. So by the end of this session, we hope to accomplish 3 things with you. First, discover how safety and security during Orientation Week is organized at York University's Kiel and Glendon campuses. 2, learn about challenges faced during Orientation Week with regards to safety and security. And number 3, identify the role of student leaders in safety and security during orientation. So first, let's start with a brief history of orientation at York University, and for those who are interested to really dig deep, our full history will be provided in our upcoming feature film. We've tentatively titled it Fast and Furious 8, accepting comments on that. So orientation at York U is a number of things. So Frosh Week, academic orientation, mature and international student orientation, as well as parents orientation. So just to give some numbers, out of approximately 730 incoming students at the Glendon campus, 350 of them attended Frosh Week. And out of approximately 8,000 incoming students at the Kiel campus, 3,200 attended Frosh Week here. So for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to be focusing on Frosh Week. Happy to accept questions at the end about the other programming at York U, but we're going to focus on Frosh Week for this presentation. A brief history continued. York University is divided into 9 colleges, and we'll be focusing on the orientation experience of those 9 colleges. It's also important for us to acknowledge that there are 2 faculties that run orientation programs at York. That's Schulich and Lassonde as well. So each college has a representative student government that hires 1 or 2 orientation chairs, and that is actually happening right now for most of our colleges. And just to break it down a little bit more, during Orientation Week in 2015, Glendon College had 105 orientation leaders, and at the Kiel campus, there were between 75 and 177 orientation leaders between all of the colleges, and orientation leaders are completely volunteer positions. So last year we saw our Orientation Week falling between September 5th and September 13th, so quite a long week for our students, but certainly a lot of fun.
Okay, so security services at York University. All right, so in the past, security services, I'd say, played a secondary role, and by that I mean they still reviewed all the events and whatnot and were present at the actual Orientation Week events, but there wasn't so much of a collaborative approach to it. Now, as Amanda mentioned, there are 9 colleges at York University, and each college has their own week they plan, their own vision for it and stuff like that. Now, many of these colleges like to hold large-scale events at night, like kind of dance parties. For example, a big one is called the Stong Pit Party, which is held by Stong College. That has 8 out of the 9 colleges there, so we're talking at least 2,000 students. And what had happened in the past was that Stong College was hiring an external security company to be present at this event to support the event staff. However, what was happening was the external security company wasn't actually vetted by anyone. It was someone who knew someone at owned a company, who used them 1 year, it worked out great, and so it just passed down year after year to each OTR, be like, oh yeah, just contact this person. The issue with this, though, is there was a couple of things, actually. Number 1, using an external security company wasn't mandatory. This was the choice of the college. Number 2, it was the college that actually was hiring the external security company with no vetting process. They didn't know if their business was up to date on the Better Business Bureau. They weren't sure, if their insurance line and stuff like that. So basically, these student governments were taking on the liability of these external security companies. So light bulb, some staff here at York University are like, we should take that away from the students. And so York underwent an RFP process, so it's a resource finding process basically, to essentially contract an external security company. And basically, on that process, we had actually the presidents of student governments on there, so it was a joint process between the university and the students. So now currently, students and administrative offices collaborate with security services on all their events. It's not a case now where the students present their event to security and they say, okay, there's so many officers you're going to need. It's a fully planned collaborative approach where security does a walkthrough with them of the space, asks them the details of what they want to do, what are they trying to accomplish, the hours they want to run for, how many volunteers are going to be, and they together create a security plan. In addition, during orientation, York Security has an increased presence on campus. There's more officers around for longer periods of time, especially at nighttime. Toronto Police Services, so TPS, is actually contracted out by York Security to be on campus as well. And the external security company, which is now contracted through York, pseudo reports to York Security. So when they're hired for an event, they are to report to York Security. They follow their lead. They understand what their role is in terms of the event management. And actually, it's worked out really great.
So let's just jump in to talk about the role of students in orientation, ensuring safety during orientation week. And as we mentioned before, there's a huge volunteer contingent to support the orientation week programming. So a York U fun fact, in 2015 there were approximately 1,200 orientation leaders. Jared and I will clap to ourselves because we're really excited about that.
In addition, every orientation leader goes through some, actually I'd like to say extensive amount of training. So Amanda and I work with a group of students in the summertime called YODA. It stands for the York Orientation Director Association. If anybody has any connections to Lucas Arts or George Lucas or Disney, please don't let them know that. That's kind of the name we call them. Exactly. But this is about a collection of 26 students who are the president and then the O-chair, O-chairs of each of their colleges. So it's actually the planners that we work with throughout the summer. Now, all of those students go through extensive training throughout the summer weekly, but then for the orientation leaders, so these are the volunteers, they all go through the following training that you see on the screen, and they go through it in different avenues. So, for example, there's an online component for alcohol education. We use something called Alcohol EDU. It's an online tool from the U.S. There's also a college-specific training, so training they do within their college, and that includes like mental health 101, inclusivity, creating inter-college relationships. That's done so there's no competition between the colleges. It's all friendly and all in good fun, positive language and so forth. And then there's also a one-day large conference that's actually student-run that York holds every year. It's the largest student conference that we hold. It's called Orient the Leader. It's OTL. And over that course of the day, we go over things like situation management, team building, walk-back procedures, dealing with intoxicated and enraged frosh and stuff like that. You'll also notice on the list that first aid and safe talk, there's an asterisk next to both of them. That's because those two trainings are mandatory for orientation chairs and presidents. They also run in the summertime, so if orientation leaders want to attend them, they're welcome to as well, but those two are the only ones not mandatory. We require all presidents, all O-chairs to be first aid trained and to be safe talk trained. And for anybody who doesn't know what safe talk is, it's suicide identification strategies. And now all of our training is based off the active bystander framework, so it's tied to theory as well. And yeah.
Great. So from Orient the Leader, which is an awesome day of training for our orientation leaders, there are a number of attitudes that we expect our orientation leaders to have following that training and to carry through their experiences as leaders. So the first one is everyone is your frosh. So no matter the college or faculty affiliation, the campus, this is a community-oriented effort. Every orientation leader is responsible for building that positive community and so that every frosh or incoming student has a positive experience. The second is being sensitive to personal boundaries. So we know that orientation leaders are often really energetic, very loud and very outgoing, which is fantastic. But through the training, they learn to challenge by choice. And what we mean by that is read the room, allow and give space for frosh to participate how they want to. So for example, if a frosh doesn't want to participate, totally cool. Let them challenge by choice. Next is to be aware of surroundings and potential situations that may come up. So what we mean by that is anticipating possible reactions from frosh. If something's going to happen, be the ones there prepared to help out. Also be open and accepting of different reactions that we may receive, providing support in situations which maybe are not so awesome and require some different attention. And also we expect our Frosh leaders to know how to triage different situations. So is this an issue for the orientation chair? Do I need to speak to a member of York University staff, such as security or the police or folks in student affairs? Next is safety first. This is way up top. So this is tied to the extensive risk management that the orientation program goes through. So an example of this is the walk-back policy. So our walk-back policy is that an orientation leader, one male and one female, must escort a Frosh from any events. If they are leaving early, need to go back to their residence room, perhaps need to catch the bus. So the intention of this is, one, so that our Frosh feels safe, and two, it reiterates the community feeling that we're trying to accomplish during Frosh Week. And that is, you're never alone. Someone is always here to help and support you. All right, next we are all part of one big community. Emphasis on big. York University is quite large, and with our multiple campuses and multiple colleges, there are communities that are built within those colleges, as well as students identify with the larger York University community. And the next one, be inclusive of everyone and everywhere. So Frosh is a week of lots of activities, and we mentioned a couple of them before, but it could take a student to Wasaga Beach or in downtown Toronto, or across the different campuses, or a party. Maybe they've never done that before. So it's important that we're inclusive of everyone's experiences coming into it, and what they've experienced previously, and how they may react differently to others in those new situations. So next, Frosh is magic. Frosh is a good time. You will meet people. You will have a lot of fun. What we mean by magic is that you will feel part of the community. All right. And also on the Frosh is magic bit, stuff will happen. And this is something that we hope that our orientation leaders know. It's how we deal with those situations that makes their training unique and makes their role in ensuring safety valuable. So lastly, orientation week is an intentional and planned experience and not a week-long party. We've talked a lot about how folks will have fun at orientation week, totally true, but everything is done for a reason. Every one of the events is intentionally planned and goes through many levels. I believe there are 9 for risk management. We also speak with security and custodial services. So everything is very, very well planned, and everything has a reason.
Okay, the contract. Yes, the ever-powerful and evil contract that we make all leaders sign. Yeah, just a joke. I don't know if the music's getting through, but that was the Darth Vader theme playing. Okay.
We tried.
To be an orientation leader at York University, you must sign the orientation leader contract. If broken, orientation leaders face a 2-year suspension for any orientation week activities, as well as a code of conduct violation that I submit. And this is in addition to any disciplinary action that comes from the student's college or faculty. And this could be anything from you are banned from attending events the first semester, you're not allowed to go on this one trip, you can't run for an elected position. So like student governments as well as take it very seriously when there's violations of this contract. This contract actually goes through our student conduct office. It's vetted by them to make sure it's in line with the code. Some key points to it is, number 1, do no harm, ensure the well-being of all students. Amanda's talked about that. Number 2, no alcohol or drugs. Orientation week is a 100% dry week for leaders and for Frosh. So it doesn't matter if you're above age, whether you're a leader or Frosh, no one is permitted to touch alcohol or drugs. And I mean, it's a week of being dry. Hopefully it's not too much to ask. Refrain from any and all sexual contact with first-year students. I'm hoping that's self-explanatory. All actions must be in accordance with York University policies. So basically, we prep these orientation leaders to not only be orientation leaders, but to be ambassadors for the university, to act as role models. So beyond just this week, we want them to be a standout person in the community or people can look up to. And this starts at orientation week. Number 5, ensure orientation week is an inclusive experience for all, regardless of gender, race, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, class, age, religion, or ability. This is straight out of the Human Rights Code. And finally, must wear orientation leader uniform at all times. So with this is that orientation leaders sign up for duties with their individual college. However, when they're not on duty, they are still on duty. Whether they are going to class, whether they're just hanging out around, they are on duty. They're expected to be ambassadors and to follow the training that they've received. Now with that as well, is our intention, or our hope at least, is that we put these students through this training, not just for orientation week, but we're hoping to take these values with them for the rest of the time at York and beyond, because in the end, we're all creating global citizens here, and orientation week is a great way to launch off these values that we expect our students to have, or at least hope to have. Okay, challenges ensuring safety and security during orientation week. Okay, number 1. A general challenge we have is non-York University individuals attempting to get into events. And this includes both graduates or alumni or non-incoming students. Orientation week happens pretty much the same time every year. And if you're a graduating student who's graduated, so you know how much fun the week is, and you sometimes come back either A, to just see how your past friends are doing, just watch the fun stuff happen, or sometimes B, you want to try and relive your orientation week experience, which is not such a good thing because, we need to encourage students that you've had your time, there's time to let other people have their fun too. Then there's also incoming students that attend. So these are students who are either A, upper year students who see a party or see an event and they just try to crash it, or B, students who actually have no affiliation with the university and just trying to get in to do whatever. So those are challenges that we do rely heavily on our York security for assistance with, and they do deliver fantastically. Number 2, firing orientation leaders who have not upheld the contract. Now, we spend a lot of time and energy with our YOTA group, our orientation chairs and presidents, and one of the toughest challenges that they say they have is when they hire orientation leaders, more than likely these people are either their friends, members of their community within their college, or at least someone that they know. And so having to turn on your orientation chair or president hat and to actually discipline or fire these individuals who have held the contract has been a challenge for some of the past because they're friends, there's a personal relationship there. There could be some emotion, someone could be going through something and they're like, oh, give me another chance, you know how much orientation week means to me. But in the end, we have to encourage them to hold everyone to the same standard, regardless of what their personal relationship is. And for the most part, they do a good job. Number 3, miscommunications between security services and orientation chairs. So at York York University Security Services, it's broken up into various components. The 2 components that we mainly deal with are campus relations and operations. So campus relations are responsible for meeting with the students, going over their events, creating the security plan with them, and then based on this information and the details they're given, they hand that over to operations, who's actually working at these events. Now, based on some miscommunications last year, the message wasn't passed off to operations that for events that were at nighttime, the O-chairs that were coordinating those events wanted to meet an hour before the event started with not only security, but with anybody working that event to go over any last-minute details and to do a walkthrough. For the first 2 events, York Security didn't attend to those. And so there was some confusion and questions as to why. We did resolve it at the end of it, but that was a miscommunication that happened that we're hoping to be done with this year. Number 4, orientation leaders not taking their training seriously, including returning leaders. So, we'd like to believe that those who are returning leaders do so because they understand the spirit of orientation, they enjoy their work, they want to come back and mentor those new leaders as well. But also part of this is that students who come back sometimes, they're like, oh, I know what I'm doing, I don't need to listen to any of this stuff, I know what you're supposed to do. And that's a challenge because then that comes in with issues with ego, or they're not showing up to training on time or something like that. And that's something that we deal with as well as the orientation chairs, but it's something that exists that we're slowly weeding out, we're getting rid of. It's this sense of entitlement and we don't need to do this stuff. Number 5, Long hours for orientation leaders, especially towards the end of the week. Now, I'm not sure about everyone else, how many hours their leaders work, but on average for us, our orientation leaders work between 12 to 15 hours a day. You know, basically start at 8:30 or earlier and go till 1 o'clock in the morning. And over the course of an 8-day orientation week, that will wear on your body. Now, we always encourage orientation chairs to take breaks. You know, if you're doing a shift from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., take the next 3-4 hours off. You know, take a nap, get something to eat, whatever it is. Take some time to re-energize yourself. Because orientation week is such an exciting time with so many people wanting to be a part of it, most students are like, no, I'm good. I'm good to go for the whole day. And, you know, we tell them, you're superheroes, but you're not super. Like, you're still human, right? So that is something that we try to provide tips and training tools on, but, you know, it does wear on leaders after a while, and they don't seem to learn the lesson after 1 week or 2 weeks. Number 6, ensuring all leaders are current students. So last year was the first time that we created a central orientation leader form. So basically in the past, all colleges would do their own process, hire their leaders on their own, and then around August they'd let us know who the leaders were so we could plug them into a database for training and so forth. Last year what we did was we created a central form on our UConnect system, so that's our central engagement platform, where anyone wanting to apply as an orientation leader had to fill it out. What we then did, we built some logic into the form where if they checked off what college they wanted to apply to, it then took them to another page that had all the college's particular questions on there. We would do none of the approvals. It would still go to the colleges, but what we would have then is the list of all leaders who were approved, and we sent that to the registrar's office to make sure that they were actually current students. What we found was, to say shocking, because in some cases, some colleges had up to 10% of their leaders not actually current students. And this is something that we did discuss at length with the YOTA group last year, and that everyone can agree with, that an orientation leader should be a current student at York University. And, you know, it can be the fact that the student hasn't enrolled in classes yet, but they need to be enrolled by the time they're a leader. And in terms of approved alumni, some, like I said before, some graduate students come back to just help out, to see their friends and whatnot. We are okay with a college having a small amount of alumni leaders, but they have to be pre-approved, and what their duties are has to be predefined as well. Number 7, classes starting in the middle of the week. So last year, classes started on the Thursday of orientation week. This year the same. Orientation week begins on September 3rd, that's a Saturday. It ends on September 11th, which is a Sunday. Classes at York University begin September 8th. Now what happens here is twofold. Number 1, the Frosh Week, attending Frosh Week will sometimes be like, okay, classes have started, I need to really focus in on school, I think I'm done here. And they will, you know, lose attendance through orientation week. The other side of it is that returning students come back, see these orientation week activities, like, oh, this looks great, I'm going to try and join this. And then they're told it's not for them, it's for incoming students. Some students try to use excuses like, well, I never attended my Frosh Week, can I come now? So on and so forth, so that is a challenge we deal with. Number 8, risk management versus external vendors. So our risk management office at York is very risk averse, and they do a really great job of being thorough. But what happens is that orientation chairs will contact an external vendor, whether it's for a boat cruise, whether it's for a bus company, and the company will send the contract over for signatures. The students send that over to risk management, who will then send it back with some edits or changes that they would like. What this in turn results in is the vendor being like, I don't understand. This is a contract we use for everyone. What's the problem here? And then the tug of war happens between the vendor and our risk management department about what changes should or should not be made. And it results in like almost a 2-month process before contracts are accepted and approved. Number 9, multiple stakeholders wanting a piece of the orientation pie. So, as you all know, because you all deal with orientation week is a wonderful time of the year. You have an entire legion of hundreds, sometimes thousands of students ready, eager, excited for the year, and they're captives, right? What happens is that many stakeholders of the university want a piece of that. They're like, oh great, we have a workshop that we'd like to test on your 300 leaders, or I have a talk that I'd like to give to all of your students. And ironically, the most common feedback that we receive based on orientation week for things like academic orientation and then things that are non-social is that students do not like talking heads. They do not like going into a room and sitting in front of somebody for 30, 40 minutes and just have them talk at them. And ironically, that's what most stakeholders want to do, so they can say, yeah, I presented this to X hundreds of students. And beyond that, the university has requirements for orientation week as well. We have a residence orientation on the first day that is mandatory for all resident students. We have a mandatory consent-based education piece that's mandatory for all students. We have the mandatory varsity game that we have to attend. And so with all of this, our student planners are like, hold on a second, I thought this was supposed to be my vision for orientation week for my students in my college. Why am I giving up all this time to all these people? So it's something that Amanda and I have to juggle on a yearly basis, both from the student side and from the administration side.
All right, so we'll get into some campus-specific challenges. So we'll start with the Glendon campus. So for the first challenge that we face is the question of, are orientation leaders off-duty in residence? So many first-year students do live in residence at the Glendon campus, and we also have about, I think it's 40 to 50% of the spots in residence are reserved for upper-year students, or excuse me, are occupied for upper-year students, many of whom happen to be orientation leaders. So one of the issues that came up recently has been, when we're in residence, are orientation leaders continuing along with their contract? Are they considered off-duty when they're in their residence room, et cetera, et cetera? The answer is they are on duty. You are an orientation leader for the whole week, and you're expected to uphold the contract, the values of the contract, with your actions and interactions with all first-year students and with other peers. So that, in terms of a solution, that requires a bit more communication on our end as well. Number two, post-orientation week parties. So we've talked a lot about building community at York University, values of respect and inclusion, and what's challenged. Sorry, those values can be challenged by post-orientation week parties, and often we find that as soon as the contract is finished, because there is a date on it, I believe, a date and time, orientation leaders may feel the need to behave in a way that is extremely contrary to the contract, and so with that we risk those values that we've built up during the week kind of falling to the wayside and not necessarily starting the year off with those important values in mind. And the third is commuter rooms. So Glendon has a couple of options for commuters. We have one, Tent City, so students who are commuting to campus can live in a tent on campus. We have a lot of green space, so it's really awesome. But there's also a commuter room. So if you look at that building right there, that's our manor. Usually the commuter room is in there, in the ballroom. It is literally a room. Students wishing to use it are free to bring air mattresses or sleeping bags or whatever they need to feel comfortable. And so the issue of safety and security particularly comes up here because we ask that we have an orientation leader in that space, ensuring that others are, respecting the space and leaving it as they found it. But a question for ourselves is that, does that put too much pressure on our orientation leaders? How can we better engage our security services at the Glendon campus to ensure that that's patrolled regularly and ensuring that our students are safe and secure sleeping over on campus in a non-resident space?
In terms of Kiel campus, so the first one is in case of emergencies, when access to emergency vehicles is coming in a timely manner. So the Kiel campus is approximately, I think, 640 acres with multiple entrances. And when 911 is called and an ambulance has to come, the ambulance drivers actually aren't aware of where they need to be. We say, come to Kiel, come to this building, it's on this boulevard. They're still kind of like, okay, where am I going on this huge campus? And so getting there in a timely manner is challenging. Now, in most cases, especially throughout the year, what security does is they'll meet the ambulance at the entrance and bring them in. But during orientation week, it's often where security is actually at the incident, so they can't meet them at the entrance, or they'll get there eventually, so it's guiding them in there that's sometimes a little bit challenging. Number two is the cost of security. So until now, York Security and the staff they have for our events, so for example, Stong College, they have one of the largest parties they have at nighttime. It's called the Stong Pit Party. This has, like I said, 8 out of the 9 colleges there, over 2,000 students, and there are usually 12 security guards on duty that night, plus TPS. This entire cost of overtime, of staffing, is taken care of by York Security Services. However, based on a conversation that we had post-orientation week with security and how the week went, there were discussions around security potentially not being able to cover 100% of the cost going forward. And this does pose a huge challenge because the orientation weeks are paid for by the colleges. each student government has a levy that's given to them every year, and they take between 30 to 40% of the levy to pay for orientation week. So the cost of security would be substantial. At York, a security guard is paid $58.50 an hour, so $58.50 an hour, and there's a requirement that they work at least a minimum of 4 hours for a shift, and a requirement that there's at least two security guards per shift. So just in the case of the Strong Fit Party alone, 12 security guards at $58.50 an hour for 4 hours works out to be just $3,000 of security costs alone. So we're hoping that this isn't the case, that we can still, work with campus partners to have this covered, because I know the students would have a challenge for this. And then number 3, space. Even though York Kiel campus, it does have a large amount of space on it, a lot of it isn't functional use space, or it's space that's already being reserved for other reasons. So during orientation week, varsity teams take up a lot of the fields for practices and stuff like that. And so there's very few actually functional outdoor places for large events or for active events to take place. In addition, we always encourage our students to plan for rain, so that means they have to book indoor events. There is no room on campus that holds 2,000 students. So in these large events, get rain delays or canceled or possibly have changed because of rain, trying to find spaces on the campus where they can accommodate those people is an ongoing challenge. So, in terms of final thoughts. So as we continue to progress through orientation week at York, it's always a case for improvement. Here are some key lessons that we've learned. Number 1, set expectations early with security services and external security. Like I said during the presentation, we have a really great working relationship with security. They're a partner in this. They do collaborative planning. And it's just important for us to make sure that at the beginning they understand, okay, what is going to be security's role in this? What is external security considered? And then what are the student leaders who are actually managing the event or running the event going to be expected to do? And this includes everything from, is there going to be pat-downs, is there going to be wanding, and stuff like that. Number 2, continue to plan orientation week from a community perspective. So, with additional discussions and collaborations. This is so worth it. So in the past, like years ago, orientation week for some orientation chairs was a competition. It was all about me, 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 me. I'm going to have the best week we've ever had. It's going to be better than everyone else's, and that's how they would actually promote it too. And it caused, issues regarding, first of all, a competition between who's best. Everybody has a great week. Our motto now, and for the last several years, has been, it's not better, it's different. Everyone has a great week. Everyone comes together through the YOTA group to plan their weeks in collaboration. They do a lot of joint events together. And yes, the discussions around them, the contracts, the reviews take a little bit longer because they're larger, more complicated events, but it's so worth it because it builds that community that we're looking for York University.
Mm-hmm. All right, the third one, continue to enhance training for orientation leaders. So orientation leaders love orientation. They think about it throughout the year. They get really excited when orientation hiring is happening. And this is something that is, 1, amazing, 2, gives us a really unique opportunity to find out what they want or what they need to be trained on. So we talked a bit about the training, the extensive training through Orient the Leader, as well as some supplemental trainings for our orientation leaders. So we can ask them, and they can contribute to the different, let us know the different challenges that they face, and then we can design and build training to better support them throughout the year. Throughout the week. So number 4, ensure accountability in leader hiring and actions. So at the Glennon campus in the Office of Student Affairs, myself and my colleague will sit on the hiring committee for the orientation chairs, and we'll assist as needed for the orientation leaders. So this one helps us to build relationships with the incoming student government president, with the orientation chairs when we move to leader hiring, and as well to show them that we're supportive. We're there to help you build an excellent orientation week. And it also gives us the opportunity to ensure that the process is followed and to ensure fairness throughout the process.
All right. I mean, just to touch upon what Amanda said about building a relationship with co-chairs and trusting them. So Amanda and I both work really closely with our students, and we spend a great deal amount of time mentoring them, coaching them, trying to support them with the tools they need to be successful. And it really pays off. I mean, there's situations that happen every orientation week that can be stressful, or or high priority 1 where our VP has to be made aware of, or security needs to act right away and police are called in. And these leaders, they stand the test. They perform beautifully, they're responsible, they respect confidentiality, and they really are shining examples of what our student leaders can be, and we're really proud of them and really grateful that we get to work with them.
Yeah, exactly. And we really, throughout the summer, as Jared mentioned, we work really closely with them. So just as an example, the orientation leaders at Glendon actually work in the Office of Student Affairs. And so they get to see really firsthand how the orientation program contributes to the success of all the programs that we run throughout the year. So one, it puts them in perspective and how their contribution is valuable. It really motivates them to continue to build that positive program. And we're done. Thanks so much to everyone for listening. We are going to open the floor for questions. But first, if you'd like to connect with us, all our Twitter handles and our emails are up there. Gifts are really cool. Applause is awesome too, but we're just so glad that you participated today, and I hope you enjoyed our funny jokes that time. So just a reminder to unmute yourself, it's *7. Yep. We do have some questions in the question box, but I think we'll take a minute to see if anyone ventures to unmute and ask a question. Aha, hello. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we will go through.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so we'll go through and read the chat questions first. Josh says, "Yay, Amanda and Jared." I'm not sure if that's a question or just is it yay, Amanda and Jared? No, I'm just kidding.
Josh, you rock.
Okay, so Kevin asks, "Do you offer any transition programming for transfer, exchange, and international graduate students, i.e. orientation pre-eval events?" Amanda, do you want to?
Yeah, so I'll speak to the Glendon campus experience. So we do have a transition program, and it's really like University 101. So how to take notes, how to study, lessons on being resilient and time management, and that's offered to all incoming students. So we certainly do get some transfer and exchange students in there if they happen to arrive prior to classes. It is held the week before the social orientation piece. So in terms of the specific folks that you mentioned, so transfer, exchange, and international students, so we'll pool our international and exchange students together for international student orientation, which again takes place just before social orientation.
In terms of Kiel, I do believe our York International Department takes care of international student needs, both undergraduate and graduate, as well as exchange, because unless they're coming from the business school of Schulich, chances are their exchange program is through York International, so I believe they take care of things like that. I don't have the details for it, but I'm happy to follow up around that. In terms of transfer students as well, we have an office called the Action Center for Mature and Part-Time Students that takes care of like mature students, transfer students, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to read Sarah's?
All right.
There you go.
Okay, the next question we have is from Sarah. Who makes them mandatory, the individual councils or the administration? And Sarah, I believe you mean the contract, but if you don't, please let us know. If you want to talk about.
No, she wrote it down here.
Oh, okay.
By them, Sarah, you meant Safe Talk and First Aid. So we make it mandatory. So because I oversee the YODA group, I say that I make it mandatory for the orientation chairs and presidents to attend that stuff because based on feedback and incidents in the past, people have had to go through this, and the feedback was this is something that was needed. Things like both programs, First Aid and Safe Talk, are certificate programs, so they're actually not only being trained in it, but they're also getting certification through it as well.
Awesome.
So yes, I'm the hammer on that one.
Okay, so Christina gave us 2 questions. Amazing. So we'll start with the first one. How did you come to the decision to allow approved alumni to help with orientation week?
So based on some past weeks where we saw alumni come back and actually try to be orientation leaders, and the question was why. We get that, some orientation chairs are nervous and they want to rely on someone that they've trusted for years to come back and to help them out with just, support on events, kind of behind the scenes stuff. We get that. What we do, though, is we ask them, who is it that's coming back? And then we will look into, me specifically, were there any instances with this person in the past before, in any of the years they're an orientation leader? We'll ask for what are the specific duties, like when are they working, because they should not be working that entire week. If it's for certain large-scale events or certain things you want them, that's fine, but we do ask that we're aware of all those things. And because one of the reasons is that our student code does not apply to alumni. But that is something that's actually a great question, because we're going to work with alumni services here, seeing what are the carrot and sticks for alumni participating back in the institution, because there are alumni chapters, so we need to clarify what are the things that we can hold them accountable to. Okay.
All right, next question from Christina. What have been the specific challenges with integrating classes into orientation week? Either moving towards this model. Awesome. So this one I think is something that we still need to put a bit of thought around. We do ask that our orientation leaders continue to wear their jerseys, or some colleges have t-shirts as well. So they're identified throughout the week. So say, for example, some of the orientation leaders are in a class that has a lot of first-year students in it. So that shows that, hey, there's someone that I can refer to. There's someone that I can look up to. They're an ambassador. They're an orientation leader. Other than that, again, that's a really great question to work on.
So the interesting is that our registrar's office, our Senate sets the dates for classes when they start, and then based on that is when your orientation week is planned. In terms of the integration aspect, there is no events happening while classes are in session on the Thursday, Friday. What they do have in terms of there is just kind of casual stuff happening. It's like, hey, if you don't have class during this time, you can come hang out in our junior common room. It'll be video games or board games or coffee and whatnot. But all the colleges know that they are not to plan actual participant-dependent events during those times. And for the most part, it's worked out well. And it's kind of a neat little thing to see when first-year students, they're going through orientation week, and they go to class, and they always say, we go to class, we see the people who didn't attend orientation week, they're kind of shy and nervous, and we're all social, talking and whatnot. So it's kind of a benefit that way. Mm. Paige, you asked if you're curious about the commuter rooms. I would love to hear more about them. I'm happy to talk about this right now briefly. Yeah. Amanda, do you want to talk about Tent City?
Totally. So I remember Tent City when I was an incoming student at York. So I think it emerged from how do we provide access to more students than just the folks who live in residence, given that so many of our events do go quite late. So voila, Tent City emerged. And then it transitioned from there to, well, everyone doesn't love living in tents, so why don't we find a space on campus where people can crash for the evenings and still feel safe doing it. So that was the commuter room. And really it's just to, one, provide access for people who may live far throughout the weekend, and it's probably not safe for them to commute late at night, or it's possible that they cannot do that late at night. And also so that they have some place to go that's in a closed environment after the certain events. I'm totally happy to chat more about the specifics about that page following as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch upon Keo, kind of the exact same process. Every college has a space they'll utilize. Most of them are within the actual college building. One or two of them can actually use residence common rooms, although that might change. And everybody is required to sign off on, this is my information, this is my emergency contact. I am agreeing that I will not hold you accountable for any loss of property, anything like that. And yeah, but we're happy to email you after to talk about more details. Yeah. Sarah, sorry, I also noticed on your question in terms of them that you wanted to ask who are the councils responsible to, or to the staff advisors, or if they're considered autonomous. So based on the relationships that Amanda and I build over the summer, we kind of trick them into believing that they have to report to us. And it's not a trick necessarily, but it's kind of a respect thing where we spend a lot of time with them and we're seen as their mentors. So they do trust us and they do report to us in that manner. I mean, ultimately, student organizations at York University are semi-autonomous, so they're free to make their own decisions as long as not violating the university policies. But because of the YODA group and the approach we take, we have it so we're looked at as mentors, not necessarily supervisors. So it's a really trusting relationship. Yeah.
We also try to show that we're there to advocate on behalf of the student organizations and to help navigate sometimes the bureaucratic system that is a public organization. So it's really helpful to build that relationship.
All right, Leslie, awesome. Thanks, Leslie. All right, Ross, what resource do you give via mobile in advance? Thank you for asking this question, Ross.
Thanks, Ross.
So York actually has 2 mobile applications that we utilize during orientation week, and actually one beyond orientation week. So the first, from York Security, it has a safety app, and on it has not only resources, but there's an emergency button on there in case you're ever feeling an emergency. You just click it, a loud sound comes from your phone, and it's loud enough for everyone to hear it. It also talks about easy ways to access security, so if you need to get a hold of security service right away, if you push the button for help, it'll contact security right away, and they will show up as soon as they can. We also last year used the app called Guidebook. I'm not sure if anybody's aware of that. What we used Guidebook for was to show all students what all the events were happening during orientation week. Over the course of 9 colleges, there were 386 events happening. Some of those were shared events between multiple colleges, but it was quite a bunch. And we also listed, these are the events that are open to everybody. So if you didn't buy an orientation kit, which is required to attend orientation week, here's events that you can attend to that are free. And it also helped in terms of like if someone's lost, all the orientation leaders were required to have this so they could direct someone who's not even part of the college. Like, oh, if you're from this college, you're looking for this event, it's right over here. The app had a map on it, so it's a quick, easy direction for people. But in most cases, the orientation leader would just walk the student to that event. So thank you, Ross. Those are some new technological breakthroughs we're using for orientation week.
So we'll take a break from looking at the chat questions to see if anyone wants to star 7 in. You brave ones, you.
No, star 7. That's all right.
We're okay with that? Cool. Okay, so we do have a couple more questions. Katie, what is the format of your orientation leader training? Online, 1 day, or week-long?
Want me to tackle this one first? Or go first?
Go for it, Ross.
Okay, I'm Jared. So we actually have multiple formats that we put all of it through. So the Alcohol Education is actually an online tool we use. We contract it out from a third-party company in the U.S. That's an online, I'd say a 30-minute tutorial, actually not even 20-minute tutorial that all students are required to complete, and not just orientation leaders and all resident students have to complete it, all varsity athletes, all peer mentors, so it goes well beyond orientation week. And there's actually a deadline for when students have to complete it by. We launch it generally toward the last week of July, and all students have to complete it by the 3rd week of August. And we can track for what college each student is from, and if they complete it or not. And if they do not complete it, once again, not an orientation leader. The second piece is college-specific, college/faculty-specific training. So that's a day of training that the college and the student government runs, and we participate in that day as well. We run mental health 101 training for all student leaders. Our Center for Human Rights comes and does inclusivity training. The student government does training in terms of intercollegial relationships, icebreaker games, the values of the college and whatnot. Trainings are specified for that kind of method based on how sensitive the topics could be. Sometimes, you're much more comfortable speaking up if you're in a room full of your peers as opposed to in a larger room with people you have no idea who they are. And the third training that we provide is Orient the Leader training, and that's the large 1-day conference that we hold. It starts off at the gym with a large pep rally kind of feel. We have a keynote speaker that comes. We introduce all the O-chairs and the presidents. And then they break off into breakout sessions, kind of like caucus, where they'll learn different topics. And each one of these topics in these rooms are student-run. So all of the training topics are based on learning outcomes, based on active bystander that we vet. And then the students actually do the presentation for us. We let them create the content, we approve it, and then they go ahead and deliver it on that day. It is a big day. It starts basically at 8:30, ends at 5:30, and it ends with the contract signing, but it's a lot of fun and a lot of energy as well.
Yeah. All right.
Kathleen.
So you mentioned you recently shifted from having a decentralized approach, so college level, to recruiting and hiring leaders towards a centralized approach where you do the hiring. Do you experience any challenges in this shift?
So I should clarify. The only thing that changed from decentralized to central is actually just the form that they fill out. Mm-hmm. The hiring process is still very much decentralized. We do none of the hiring. Like I have my own orientation staff that I hire that manages the YOTA group, but the orientation leaders are still very much hired by the colleges and their student governments. All the thing that we did was centralize the documenting process. Yeah. So sorry if that wasn't clear.
Great question. All right. Shout out to Sarah for chatting about commuter rooms too. Awesome. And thank you, Kevin. All right. So Christina had a follow-up question. Who is responsible for creating the content for your academic orientation? Do you have academic content integrated into your week or only before? So the orientation program includes academic orientation, and that's run on a I always get confused, college or faculty. It's funny because Glendon is all three. So it's run on the college or faculty level, and it starts with, at least in the Glendon experience, an opening ceremony of sorts, and then goes into some key messaging around the intentions we wish to set for the week. and then it goes, students break out into their different academic programs, and then they come together with all York University students for like an induction, welcome to the community type of event.
So for Kiel Campus, what we actually have done over the last 5 years, we've created this program called UStart, and what it's doing is it's 3 components. One is the online enrollment they do for first years. The second is these modules that students do over the summertime where it learns about different areas of work with transportation, staying healthy, getting involved, so on and so forth. And then it culminates in a 1 day during orientation week. This year it's on the Wednesday, September 7th, the day before classes start. And the day is broken up into 3 segments. So at the beginning in the morning for a 2 to 3 hour block is faculty specific and broken down to the program. So students who are all in the same program will go to certain sessions, will go to a session for that program, and they'll talk about things that deal with the program. And then maybe beyond that, the faculty. Then after that 3 hour block, they'll do a college physics component, which is basically they'll meet with their college, they'll do the lunch there, they'll go over the college's values, the history of the college and stuff like that. And then after, they all come together in our stadium here we have in York, the Aviva Center, for a, it's a multiple activity presentation consisting of consent-based training, which we call You Had Me at Consent. There is a kind of an induction ceremony, sort of like a mini convocation, but for students incoming, it's very short. And there's a piece that we call for Lions Pride, which is just a giant pep rally showcasing some of our clubs, our performers, and stuff like that that everyone really enjoys. And for Amanda and for Glendon, because they're on a different campus, their morning takes place on their campus, but they do join us in the evening for the Lions Pride and consent-based training and stuff like that. So that's what we kind of do for our academic orientation now.
Cool. All right. Well, that finishes off the questions in our chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for jumping on in there.
Please feel free to get in touch with us, either tweet us or email us. Happy to answer any more questions. It's great knowing this community exists. So big thanks to Josh and to Leslie for putting this together. And hoping to talk with everyone real soon on our next our phone call, which is, when's our next?
Soon.
We'll leave it to Josh to figure that one out. Good luck, Josh. All right, thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.